Good evening and welcome to tonight's live author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Josie from Greenlight Bookstore, and we are thrilled to be hosting tonight's event with Ricky Tucker presenting his new book, and the category is Inside New York's Vogue, House, and Ballroom Community. He'll be talking with Darcy Steinke, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Ricky, Darcy, and the team at Beacon Press for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space and conversation and connection. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and there are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other's throughout tonight's event. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by Ricky, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech bubbles at the bottom of your screen. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And importantly, tonight's featured book and the category is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at both our Fulton Street and Flatbush Avenue stores, where you can purchase Ricky's book and many others on site. You can also order online at Greenlight Bookstore for a quick pickup or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll drop those buy links in the chat. And as a thank you for attending tonight's virtual event, we're offering 10% off Ricky's book. Enter the coupon code GreenlightEvents10 into the coupon discount section at checkout online for 10% off. On that note, Ricky is stopping by our store to sign copies of the book, so you can get a signed or even personalized book by request while supplies last. Make sure to indicate your signed copy request in the order comments at checkout when ordering online by midnight tonight, or look for signed copies when you visit the store. And now on to the good stuff. Our interviewer tonight is Darcy Steinke, who is the author of the memoir Easter Everywhere and 5 novels: Sister Golden Hair, Milk, Jesus Saves, Suicide Blonde, and Up Through the Water. Her books have been translated into 10 languages, and her nonfiction has appeared widely. She has taught at the New School, Columbia University School of the Arts, New York University, Princeton, and the American University of Paris. She lives with her husband in Brooklyn. Darcy will be speaking with our featured author, Ricky Tucker, a writer, educator, activist, and art critic based in Brooklyn. His work explores the imprints of art and memory on narrative and the absurdity of most fleeting moments. He has written for the Paris Review, the 10th Magazine, and Public Seminar, among others, and has performed for reading series including the Moth Grand Slam, Sister Spit, Born Free, and Spark London. In 2017, he was chosen as a Lambda Literary Emerging Writer Fellow for creative nonfiction. In his new book, Tucker pulls from his years as a close friend of the community to reveal the complex cultural makeup and ongoing relevance of house and ballroom, a space where trans lives are respected and applauded, and queer youth are able to find family and acceptance. And the category is a love letter to the legendary Black and Latinx LGBTQ underground subculture, uncovering its abundant legacy and influence in popular culture. Ricky is going to start us off with a reading from the book, and then he'll be talking with Darcy and with all of you. Please take it away, Ricky and Darcy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. So I'm just going to read from the first chapter of the book. The book is broken up into categories, and most of them are categories that are walking categories for ballroom. So realness, body, vogue, but some of the categories are socio-political issues. Starting with chapter 1, work, and that's W-E-R-K, like work. And it just sort of talks about the different points in pop culture that may have made you familiar with ball culture, including Madonna's Vogue and Pose, and Paris is Burning, etc. And so I'm just going to read a little bit from that. This is a bit where I take Madonna to task. Madonna wears a lot of faces, many of them Black, sometimes kabuki or Latin, but rarely ever her own. I remember when the song Vogue first came out. I was 8 years old and my mother was in the wood-paneled bathroom of my great-grandmother's North Carolinian home, getting ready to go out with her gay best friend, Reggie. They both had roots in New York and in the South, and were known for being way too fabulous for their immediate podunk surroundings. We were listening to 102 Jams, the Piedmont Triad's local urban radio station, when Shep Pettibon's irresistible scents and snaps began to slowly trickle in across the airwaves. Strike a pose, Madonna announced robotically. followed by what was that whispered, goosebump-inducing word Vogue. Mommy and Reggie, at first staring into the brightly lit mirror above the sink, respectively teasing and scrutinizing themselves, turned at once to face each other. I watched on blankly. Can you believe this, Trix? Reg asked. He always called her Trixie. Do you see what this heifer is doing? My mom didn't miss a beat. Yes, honey, she said. I guess she thinks she's one of the children now. I tried to remain small, sitting on the corner of the tub as they went on clutching their pearls about how that leech Madonna went and lifted Brown Gay Life right out of the club and plopped it onto the pop charts. I got the feeling from their conversation that maybe most of America didn't exactly deserve or couldn't even comprehend such a gift. Ultimately, I gleaned the fact that secret, precious events go down in the club during those times when I was at home asleep, never able to see the payoff for Mommy and Reggie's pregame show. As an adult, I later learned that clubs and balls were just as viable a way to come to Jesus as church was. I also figured out that queer Blackness, when fully unleashed, is some kind of mystical, magical commodity sparked from having to constantly laugh in the face of death in the name of life, a rebirth that can never actually be impersonated, kind of like a pigeon that paints itself red and throws on a sandwich board reading, I'm a phoenix, believe me. Girl, sit down. 2 decades later at the new school in New York City, with Paris is Burning on my mind and in my heart, I registered for the part dance instruction, part theory focused course called Vogueology, a cerebral and aerobic space that would change my life. There I was introduced to co-instructors Robert Simber, who's a public health advocate and artist, and Michael Roberson, who's a theologian and father of the House of Garçon, and the choreographer, the legendary Pony Zion. In the course, we learned both Vogue technique and ball history, but most importantly, we became a family, something like our own house, one that was welcomed into the ballroom community as allies, joining the fold with a critical theoretical perspective and an understanding that we should proceed with respect and appreciation for the community, not a desire for appropriation. Okay, I'm going to stop there and scooch forward to just one more bit. So as a nod to the glitz and glamour of old Hollywood, Madonna uses the bridge of the song Vogue as a parenthetical opportunity to resurrect, by name, 16 major stars of yesteryear. It's a compelling roster of old school influencers that perfectly paints the image of opulence and austerity she'd intended. Super effective. The only problem is these people have absolutely nothing to do with Vogue, ballroom, or the Black and Latin urban experience. It's a literal whitewash. You know how it goes. Greta Garbo, Anne Monroe, Dietrich and DiMaggio, Marlon Brando, Jimmy Dean on the cover of a magazine, Grace Kelly, Harlow Jean, Picture of a Beauty Queen, Jean Kelly, Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers danced on air. They had style, they had grace. Rita Hayworth gave good face. Lauren, Catherine, Lana too, Betty Davis, we love you. Ladies with an attitude, fellas that were in the mood. Don't just stand there, let's get to it. Strike a pose, there's nothing to it, Vogue. Now, in knowing the cultural implications of a list like this, how the use of white names and sensibilities are used as lube for ears of white audiences dying to be penetrated by the Black experience, and knowing that 2 words paired together are endlessly generative, I could easily be here for all of eternity explaining to you precisely why this list is fucked up in the context of Vogue and ballroom. But some of this list infractions are worse than others, and I'd like to point some of them out to you. While yes, Marilyn Monroe is likely one of the most drag-inspiring pop icons out there, men, women, and Madonna alike platinum blonding themselves to death to be her, Monroe is not ballroom. Although here, Madonna mistakenly got it sort of right, as drag balls sparked ball culture, and the reverence for Monroe is there. She was busty, ambitious, and died of a melodramatic pill overdose. The girls live for that. And to that end, the cross-dressing original femme stud Greta Garbo scratches that same itch. Yet, where Madonna starts to get me wholly fucked up is her mention 2 names down, Joe DiMaggio and a baseball player with no connection to queerness or Blackness or dance or anything, not even run-of-the-mill glamour. Dropping DiMaggio's name also inserts hetero white privileged love into the very top of what should be a brown queer list. He and Monroe were married at the peak of their respective careers. And I don't know how privy America was in 1990 to the longstanding rumors about Marlon Brando and James Baldwin's romantic dynamic in the 60s and 70s, or the corroborated stories of James Dean and Dennis Hopper's intimate moments while roommates during the filming of Rebel Without a Cause. But other than these exploits, what in the hell do they have to do with voguing? It goes on and on. Okay, and then I just want to read one last part that sort of autocorrects that in a way. So my mentor, Michael Roberson, has a saying, "We speak your name." He says the names of ball legends, including the late Hector Extravaganza and Pepper LaBeija, but also those trans and POC pioneers who weren't featured in high-profile music videos, hit TV shows and films like Stonewall heroine Marsha P. Johnson and NYC Black Pride founder Lee Soldier. It works as an evocation and acknowledgement of the uncanonized icons. In an effort to once again brownwash what is theirs, I have reconfigured the bridge to the song Vogue. And it goes like this. Crystal LaBeija, Miss Corey, Rich and Larry Ebony, Willie Ninja, Paris Dupree, all visions of a legacy, Andre Mizrahi, Marsha P., picture of a trans queen, Twiggy's Catwalk, Laomi's Hair, and Love and War, all shade is fair. They had style, they had grace, Kia and Venus give good face, Angie, Hector, Jose 2, Pony Zion, we love you, MCs with an attitude, icons get our gratitude, big ups to Harlem where they grew it, respect their lives or girl, don't do it, Vogue, we speak your name.
Wow, that was so good. I just want to be like, boom, boom, boom. That was so good.
I appreciate the encouragement.
That was so good. Okay, wow. Okay, I feel like we could just like drop the mic. We could just stop right now, basically. You know what I mean? Like, my questions are going to be just like, wah, wah, wah. Just like, yeah, okay. But let's just do it anyway because we have to. Okay, so I just want to say how happy I am like to be here. I just feel like I've enjoyed our new friendship. I've also really loved the book. I think the book, and also, you know, I got to see you read not too long ago too. And I'm very impressed with your prose style. I think that's the thing I want to say, like, actually, before we start the book is like, the book is very alive, like more alive than most books. Like, we're not talking about like regular old prose here. Like, we're talking about prose that's like sort of deeply alive. It kind of, my mentor used to say, what we want on the page is living flesh.
Oof.
Yeah, right. But I feel like you're getting there, you know what I mean? It's like really good, you know, like you're at it like in a different direction, but I was very impressed by that. So I felt that. So I just want to say how happy I am to be here and to celebrate this book and to celebrate you, to celebrate ballroom, voguing, drag, all these things.
Thank you this was your idea. So thank you.
Yes, it was. I know, actually, frankly, I'll be honest. I like interrupt, like we were at like a writer's your retreat together and I interrupt your reading to say like, let's do an event at Greenlight because I was like so excited. I just can't help myself. I just sort of get the, I should get the way. I want to tell one story before I start with my questions because I mean, I don't know how much we'll get into this, but I have been interested in drag for a long time, and I'm not really sure. I'm never really sure why, as like a cis straight woman that I am, you know. But I was a Stegner fellow at Stanford, and that's, you know, was in San Francisco. That was my first experience of drag, really, and I don't know, maybe this is the part of the reason why. Okay, so the Pope came. It was John Paul II. So I went out to see him in his Pope mobile. He came to San Francisco and it was incredible. Like he's in this glass case, like a snow dome. And you know what was amazing, Ricky, is the quality of the fabric of his, like the lace, the linen. You realize you had never seen fabric before. You know, you had never really seen fabric before. Like you realize like, and also, frankly, the high drag of it, you know, like just the very, very. And so we were there, we saw him, you know, I'm a minister's daughter. It was weird, but interesting for me, you know, and we were waiting around. And then who comes is the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, like the drag nuns come directly afterwards. Like, I mean, within like 15 minutes, you know, well, and yeah, they were incredible. They were so like, I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt the freedom involved in it. Like the two things together, like to see the high camp of the Pope, yeah, you know, had its thing. And then to see the sisters, you know, like if people don't know, they're like a drag, they're a drag order of nuns. They've been going on forever. They each have their own characters. I mean, many have died and there's new ones. And I you know, it's a thing that I followed for a long time. So that was my first really strong influence. I mean, that was the first time I actually saw, you know, drag, you know, in its full manifestation. And it was like, I I was completely like blown away. You know what I mean? Like the level of like complexity, like the level of ideas, the complexity, the freedom involved in it. So anyway, so since then it's been a journey for me, you know, so I'm very happy to read your book because I'm constantly interested in this and like the history of it. And now it's more important than ever now that we understand that we should have always understood, but the way these subcultures were nurturing people that were not nurtured, and like, you know, how important they were, you know, it's like, you know, so
history of it is super important to retain for sure. But you know, Rupaul says and someone else is going to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something to the effect of like you're born naked and the rest is drag, and
right.
And I think the book is a little bit of a template, even though it's not necessarily about drag, but it's like that's like a Venn diagram that sometimes is just a circle, right? But like, but I think to that sort of aesthetic point, that sort of like it can't be heighten your identity kind of point.
Right. Yeah.
This book is really for everybody. Like it's
right.
Like,
exactly. I felt it. Yeah.
Ballroom is like is a template for like all of our struggles, all of our traumas, all of our freedoms.
Yeah.
Waiting around the corner, all of like, you know, in the book, I talked to Genovia Chase for a second, and she talks about she doesn't walk Vogue, she walks runway generally, but when she's like about to go into a business meeting or something, she'll just like go to the bathroom and like Vogue a little bit just to like
oh, interesting. Wow.
And that's like kind of everybody's right. Like that's a tool that everybody should use, especially in this world of like, you know, PTSD and current traumas, and you know, we need
no, I agree. I think you're right. I mean, I think the reason, we have like Legendary, we have Pose, we have RuPaul's Drag Race, but like I think it's, I think I kind of agree with you. I think the things that people are identifying with is that people feel like they want to be bigger than themselves, and they also don't feel like they're selves. So it's so strange. It's like, and there's a way in which these things kind of like both these things are addressed in ways that are like, you talk a lot about like religion in your book, which of course I love, and theology, which I'm going to get to in a minute, but in ways that I think are sort of metaphysical and very mysterious, which I think is part of the power of it. Like you can't really explain drag. I feel like drag has a piece of it that's like, you can't completely get at its power. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that's something like in our world where there's so much, you know, this is what this means. This is facts. This is whatever. It's like that there's a lot of, you know, and it's hard to find these pockets of mystery, you know? And I actually do think that, that drag is one of them. Partly with the power of the idea of, you know, like working with the, you know, binary system and fucking that up. And that's a very powerful thing that I think everyone's felt, but now it's finally like coming up, you know, it's like,
drag is mysterious. It's kind of that weird middle space between like, you know, like they're like, you know, nature's clowns, but then also like they're also social critics, and
exactly.
They're troubadours and bards.
Right.
But also there is,
but the transporting element it too. Like I have to say during COVID, I just like, I hung on these shows, man. They were everything to me because they were the only thing that was truly transporting for me. You know? You know what I mean? Like they meant a lot to me, you know? It's like, so it's like interesting, right? Like, but let me get some of my actual questions because I feel like we could riff forever. I want to get like a little bit like, okay, so I'm going to kind of skip a few because you've already sort of covered some of these things. So you talked about your class at the New School of Vogueology. You talked about your gay dads, Michael Roberson and Robert Semper. And I was very interested, like the book is a lot about you too. And you're like the way that you sort of coming to Ballroom was like a religious experience, basically like a way for you to find your own community. Not that much different than like, you know, like St. Augustine's Confessions, you know, like, you know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of similarities, you know, like you, and not even that there was like sin that you had to, but it's almost like you were away from, you were away from the truth, and then this got you closer to the truth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Which is right, which is the way. So I just wondered if you could sort of speak to that idea of sort of the way you came into yourself through this, because I think that's an important part of the book, you know?
Yeah, that's sort of what it was. It was less like I get the confession metaphor, but it was less sort of, I mean, if there were a confession, if there were a sin to confess, it would be that like I was like homophobic against myself, or like internalizing homophobia that my like dad had put on me and other folks in the world.
Yeah.
And so before I even ever took Vogology or moved to New York, I saw Paris is Burning, and that's really when the switch flipped on, that religious switch. It was like this thing where I was like a little bit scandalized. I was like, what is this, you know? But then also like, there it is finally.
Right. Yeah.
Like all the toxic masculinity in the world, there has to be this space somewhere where people are just like being themselves. So that sort of initial spiritual thing switched when I saw Paris is Burning. But you know, it's been invaluable to me to have gay men, and in particular with Michael, a Black gay man, my mentors in academia.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean,
yeah.
He and I did a talk at Bennington, the first like gig we did for this book, like a little barn talk, and I did a Vogue workshop for them. And Michael had to zoom in because he missed his train, blah, blah, blah. So he's on the phone with me at one point, and he's talking about going over to Yale and doing guest lectures. I was like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, yeah, I think they might have a spot for me, because, you know, all these students came up afterwards and they're like, you're the first Black gay lecturer that's a man that we've ever had. And I was like, is that serious? I was like,
really?
That's exactly what I was like, in the tri-state area?
Yale? I thought Yale was supposed to be on that shit. That's crazy. Like, wow.
so
that's
like I was like, that's weird. And so while I'm talking to him, I'm thinking, oh my God, he was my first. Like,
interesting. Yeah. Even with the new school, which is sad.
Right?
Yeah, the new school needs to do more work. Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't want to get into that. Yeah. No, it's wrong. Yeah. No, it's. Oh wow.
So a lot of it in terms of representation of like the spaces that I now occupy, like I do know that public intellectuals, I know them firsthand, and they helped raise me. And so like that, my real father could never do that for me.
Yeah. Okay. That goes into the next question, because I'm very interested in this idea of you know, the family of Ballroom, you know, the idea of the houses, the families, you know, mothering, which I want to get into too. But I wanted to just read this quote, actually from your book, where it says, Ballroom is a response to classism, racism, transphobia, and a list of other cultural constructs. But at its core, Ballroom is an answer to an act against nature, parents disowning their children.
Yeah.
You know, and that, I have to say, I really felt that. Like, I thought to myself, I mean, there's a part of me that was so grateful to Ballroom, because like, it makes me so sad that that's like, of course, I know that's a reality, you know, like, I know that I'm not going to go through the parts where your dad was complicated and sometimes extremely terrible, you know what I mean? But I just wanted to know if you could talk about that a little bit, like this idea of like, I mean, you know, we hear all the time, like, oh, people, people come to New York, they make new families, they do this, but that really got to me. I was like, it's not just like, you just didn't like your parents because they weren't cool. You know what I mean? It's like, they actually disowned you. So you had to like, you were like, it was like you had to make a new family, like for your survival, you know?
Yeah. And my friends I've always been kind of a loner, and I do have a good family that loves me, and they're hilarious and they're so smart, but haven't always been able to support me in the ways that I've needed. And so my friends, as a gay man from North Carolina, a gay Black man from North Carolina, leaving that space, running away from home at 19 and moving to Boston for about 10 years, changed my life. And, you know, friends that I've had since I was 9 years old, they still are some of my best friends, because
that's great.
Just need them, you know. But it was different with Ballroom, because the family system sort of just baked in. And as soon as I hit that class, Michael and Robert were just like, what do you need? You know, like, what do you need? You're hungry? Come to this free New York public health thing, and there's free fill out a survey. We'll give you a train pass to get there, you know, like that kind of stuff. And like,
So great.
And across 10 years, I mean, three
Yeah.
while I was at school, but across those 10 years, it just, it was invaluable. And they always just said, you know, when you're trying to get the trust of ballroom folks, just show up, just keep showing up. Don't be avoidant, just keep showing up and engaging in stuff. And I'm kind of shy at first. And so, and I'm a writer. So I really kind of just want to sit in the corner and like, you know, and say one nice thing. And, but you know, ballroom sort of forced me to get in there, you know.
Yeah.
So it was, it was right on time.
Yeah, right. You know, I wanted to ask you too about, I mean, I was very interested in the drag mothers. I mean, I've been interested just from my, the sort of entertainment things that I watch, like the talking of like, the mothers of the houses and like the idea of the drag mother. And it's so interesting to me because I mean, of course I'm a mother and, I had a daughter, but I always wanted to write a parenting book that was just called like, get your shit together. Like, because I feel like the main thing that you need for mothering is to just deal with yourself.
Word.
You know what I mean? Okay. Yeah. Word. Exactly. Right. Because, my own mother, wow. Okay. So if you could deal with yourself, then that would help you be such a better mother. But I was so impressed in your book. I'm like, this is really what my dream of mothering. These are like mothers that have had to deal with, I mean, this is like what I want from like all kinds of mothers, like they've had to deal with themselves. They've gone through this experience. They've done the work to then mother. People act like you have a baby and then you can just mother it, but that's not really true. I mean, you have to deal with yourself a lot and your own stuff, your own subjectivity, actually the ways you're projecting, like in order to be a successful mother, and I was very inspired, I have to say, by these drag mothers. And I just wondered if you could like speak to that a little bit. Like,
yeah, I mean, a lot of the, some of the folks that I spoke to in the book who are currently like legends and icons in ballroom, like Luna Luis Ortiz, who also did some of the photography for the book, and who I'll be in conversation with tomorrow at the LGBT Center Second Tuesdays, which is and such
maybe put that in the chat at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Luna was brought into the Pendavis house, and the mother and the founding mother of Pendavis was Avis Pendavis. And so when I met with Luna to do the interview during COVID, we met at the center, then we walked down to the piers, and Luna wanted to do a whole experience for me. I'm like, girl, I've been here. He's like, but this is the real deal,
Right,
so and Luna talked about a lot of stuff. His AIDS activism, because he contracted HIV at like 14 or 15.
Wow.
And ended up becoming, and is still alive, right? And ended up becoming like a poster child for HIV activism, along with like, he was like a paralleled or like a contemporary with Pedro Zamora from the real world. So there's like
interesting.
But Avis took Luna under her wing, and actually I just talked to Luna yesterday, and Luna added a memory. So because Luna found ballroom and Avis, Luna joined the House of Pendavis and then started going to Harvey Milk High School in Astor Place.
Wow, amazing.
And then started working for Hetrick Martin, and now works for the GMHC. And he was telling me yesterday that his father and Avis were both at his high school graduation.
Oh, that's so great.
And like his mom couldn't be there. His dad took a picture of it. He said that meant so much to him.
I think we really have to open up the idea of mothering. I feel like mothering, it's so sentimental and it can be just like so narcissistic. Yeah. I feel like mothering is such a strong force in the universe. You know what I mean? Like if we could, I mean, I'm not saying that we have to totally separate it from like birth, but I'm just saying that like, I mean, even me, I mean, my daughter now is older, she needs only a certain amount of mothering, but I have to say, I think to myself, like, how can these skills that I have, which I've worked on really hard, like I've thought about a lot, you know what I mean? Like, how can I, what? Yeah, like how can I use them now? I mean, not to be like, weird to anyone, but how can I like universalize somehow my mothering? You know what I mean? Like, and I actually felt like I was very, very inspired by the mothers in this book. And I actually am hoping that some of these women could maybe write a parenting manual, because I think it would help us a lot.
That's
right?
a great idea.
I think it would really help us a lot. You know what I mean? I think it would help. And also, I mean, I don't know. I just think I very much identify with the idea that there's like, I've always thought there was something a little bit closed and disturbing about the nuclear family. I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, I was a single mother, so I was kind of on the outside of that, and sometimes feeling, all the movies end with like the nuclear family getting together, and it was kind of hard sometimes for me and my daughter, to feel a part of things. Sometimes, we were on the outside a little bit from the nuclear family, yeah, that was something I think about, but it also, as all these things do, like it expanded my idea of what it is to really to love and to nurture, so I don't know. I feel like this is a thing that could help a lot. Like, the idea of expanding mothering to other, and not just in like a dumb way, like, oh, I'm going to mother the world, but in a really specific way with these specific skills. I was very inspired by this, Ricky. So you want to say that.
Thank you. Well, I mean,
I'm helpful. I mean, I'm grateful for the whole book, but this was a part that really sort of got to me. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, yeah, that children chapter, it was a lot, because that includes the lists of like the way everybody in the book, pretty much everyone who's a mother, their approach to mothering.
Exactly.
That was so I'm really glad I included that, actually.
Me too. I loved it. I learned a lot from it. And I also think even as a young mother, it would have helped me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, but also just a human too. I mean, you said, mother the world, which I think isn't a stupid idea. The sentiment is great. The wording is just like, wow, right? It's like trying to
totally. No, it's stupid. No, I'm saying that like that's not what you want. Yeah. But you don't. Yeah, but you want to be able to use, I mean, you have these mothering skills, and then you want to be able to use them in ways that are, I don't know, somehow, I don't know. It was very inspirational, the idea of like mothering in ways that were not conventional, but also as real as any fucking mother. You know what I mean? Like,
real.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I got it. You know what I mean? Like I understood it. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. All right. So
a lot of the practical stuff, because I mean, like again, these houses and these mothers are answers to ones that have been left behind, right? So
yeah, exactly.
A lot of it is just coming to your high school graduation. A lot of it is
showing up. Exactly. Just show up. That's the thing. Show up. Yeah. All right. So let's. I want to just get to a few of my questions. All right, so I kind of want to go to the last chapter because I know we only have so much money, but actually so much time, but I love the last chapter so much. And I love your two gay dads, Mike Robertson and John Semper. And I just wanted to read this, like a few quotes, because I just love that chapter so much. And there was a few things that really, and I guess it's Michael that went to seminary, right? Like at Union. My own personal dream is also to do this.
I think you should, and I think you could.
I think I would be good at it too. I can't quite afford it yet, but I think I don't know. I have no interest in being a minister or anything like that. But I'm very interested in getting a divinity degree. Okay, so all right. So I think this is him talking. Let's make sure. Okay, yes. Okay, so in Ballroom, there's this deep sense of the performing body, the moving body, or what we could say in a certain sense is the resurrected body. Okay, that I have to say, as a minister's daughter, I was like, hello. I was like, okay, wow, that was so good. And I know exactly what he means, like, I mean, like the body completely awake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not really about like being raised from, I mean, it is being raised from the dead in a way. That's the weird thing. Like, but it's also just like completely awake, completely alive, and therefore inspirational to others.
That's right.
Yeah.
And by example, I mean, I think the thing I found out about Ballroom very early on, taking that class with Michael and Robert, is that it is just riddled with paradoxes, right? Like back then, gender binaries were even more binary, right? And we, as soon as I stepped into that class, it was like, let's just blur it all up, The very act of like going to a ball, just wanting adoration and a good score, and you practice and you made a costume, and you're, and then you fail and they tell you you're not good enough. That's a type of death. The next time you go, you win a trophy and you get your life, and that you're constantly sort of like, it's both of the things. It's the struggle that results in the freedom of the ballroom floor. Like, it's just,
Right.
and so the more I leaned into and sort of just, what Michael says, I think in the book, he says like, just holding that complexity and not feeling like you have to solve it.
That's everything. I mean, that is actually, I'm realizing more and more, even that's what philosophy is. Like, you set up the problem and then you don't try to solve it. You just slowly untangle it for years. Maybe a small solution will come, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's actually what we're talking about, you know, as far as, I mean, that's what knowledge is, you know?
That's kind of it. That's kind of it. And I've been
with a problem. Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this book I've been thinking about this subject for 10 years, and then the book became a possibility 2 years ago. And it literally had never, I don't think it occurred to me to write this book until a colleague who is also an agent suggested it.
Right.
And I was like, obviously I should write this. Like,
right. Yeah.
Which makes it even more right. But to your point, that sort of accumulated knowledge, like I'm very okay with sitting with all the wonderful complexities of ballroom and then relating that to everyone. And really, if there's a thesis to the book other than like, you know, screw capitalism, you know, pro-black, pro-brown, it's and pro-trans, it's really like, I only have more questions. And
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, this is because I have to say I have one little like where we might have a little, a little tension, because I feel like that's important in discussion, right? And then we're going to go into the ending, which is going to be like just like my love for the ending of the book, which is so beautiful about theology and art. So I have to say that, I mean, I guess most recently, of course, there's RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, the hard part for me sometimes when I'm watching it, like, because I want to feel completely connected to it, which maybe just is impossible since I am who I am, you know, like I have these like barriers, you know, but the idea that like, you know, I mean, sometimes like sex workers are referred to as whores. That's really hard for me, you know, like, and then also like the idea of step your pussy up. I don't know. Actually, sometimes I feel like, I guess my main question is, and this is a real question that I am actually frankly struggling with. I think about it when I walk through Prospect Park and whatnot, is like my incredible attraction to this, like in the idea of like, you know, of the vibrancy of the resurrection of the body, the idea that like, all bodies deserve dignity, which I'm clearly reacting to when I love drag or ballroom. But the idea of it's like, you know, separation from like a certain female embodiedness, you know, the idea that like we, you know, like the menstruation, the worried about getting pregnant, the pain of childbirth, you know, like all these like sort of like, I mean, they're kind of boring, like female things, but the reality of those like things sometimes, and I'm always confused because I think it's a part of me wants to also deny those things. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm going to go along with this this beautiful, glamorous, you know, idea of what like a woman is like, right? But I actually think that what draws me to it, and believe me, like, you know, I'm on there looking to see when these episodes are going to be ready. You know, I really, really am a fan, you know, is that somehow the idealized version of it combined with the clear struggle in it, even though I have these questions, you know what I mean? These sort of almost like traditional feminist questions, it overpowers them. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's a victory on their
you know what
end.
I'm saying though? But is it crazy what I'm saying, or like?
No, it's not crazy what you're saying. And I do think, you know, like when we think about like the stuff lately that like the turfy stuff that like J.K. Rowling has been saying, one thing that like she made some tweet that said something to the effect of like talking about like aligning being a woman with necessarily having a baby, but that's also not necessarily the experience of most cisgendered women either.
No, not at all. No one. I mean, some people don't have babies. Yeah,
some people have babies. Some people.
I mean, nobody knows what it is to be a woman.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's working on it. Everybody.
Yeah, nobody knows like what it is to be a woman. No one. Yeah.
And being a man is the same way. And what's interesting is I have a friend who is F to M, so transitioned into being a man. And the first sort of thing he started doing was like dressing up like a lumberjack and like, chopping wood and
Right. Yeah. Right.
and sandalwood and it's just like in boxing and like all of these
Like
things.
eating like a lot of meat, maybe too. Like
Steak.
Yeah.
Just going to steakhouses, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Right. Yeah.
and so, and I had an initial sort of like thinking to myself as a Black gay man,
Right.
up in this life, I
Yeah.
have worked so hard to get away from that.
Mm.
You sort of just want to jump immediately into the stereotypes, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm at 30 I decided, okay, I'm going to start kind of dancing in a feminine way. I hope it's okay, like that. So
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so I get that instinct, but I do think the power of the performance of drag is so it's transcendent, and so it takes you a little bit those concerns. I think that's the entertainment value of it too. But what's interesting about drag in particular, now there are drag kings, right? There are women who dress up as men, right?
Right.
And they've been in the balls for as long as balls have been around, so 150 years. So there have been drag kings. I've seen them described in news clippings when I was doing research,
Right.
But what's interesting about RuPaul's Drag Race is that everybody, whoever you are, they've
expanded
it, but whoever you are in the beginning, your aim is to become a woman.
Yeah, right.
So there it used to, and RuPaul has had to change his language since.
Yes, which is good, right? Yeah.
Race or structure engines made the best woman win.
I definitely think RuPaul, you have that thing where you talk about I can't remember where it is now, but you talk about somewhere where there's, there is some, too much interest in the binary. And I think you have somebody say, oh yeah, actually Ballroom has become a very patriarchal space. I think this is Gia. Yeah. Actually, a lot of these men believe in the binary and they believe in, hair to actually normativity. Actually, but the thing is I guess what I'm saying is that these things are always at play in ourselves. The things that I've taken into myself, right? You know what I mean? About what it is to be a woman, so, these are deep things, which you sort of you understand that the things that you write about, in the book are kind of trying to heal these things. Right. But it's hard not to bring your own, bring your own, feelings of woundedness as well. Right. And the woundedness is in a wide variety of manifestations, I would say. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And not for nothing, just because ballroom houses and families are alternatives to our original traumatized and neurotic families, it doesn't mean that ballroom is not that as well.
Has that as well, of course. That's all families do, right? Yeah.
Let me go,
because I want to just, before we have a few questions, but because the beautiful ending of your book, I want to just sort of go to that. So I really loved at the end where it says, I think again, it's Michael Robeson saying, there's going to be a high demand for art next year, post-pandemic. Art will be the theologian. It will be the theologian, just like the pandemic. And I want you to go into that a little bit more and explain that. I love that idea. I think I understand it, but I want maybe you to sort of unpack it a little bit for us.
It's taken me years to unpack everything that he said, and I'm still working on it. But I will say though that he thought of, and you read it, that he thought of 2020 as a breakthrough time to sort of reassess and make a shift.
Right? Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we know that art comes from the best art comes from trying times, right?
Right,
and,
of course.
and the best stand-up comedians have traumatic lives, et cetera, right?
Right.
And so maybe I've seen that a little bit out in the greater world. I think ballroom has always been that consistently, but I do think I experienced that personally by writing this book in 9 months during the pandemic.
Interesting. Okay, that's great. Okay, so you yourself did it. I had a strong feeling that the book does definitely have a theological underpinning too. So that's sort of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I meditated a bunch during that time. I focused and just wrote all day, and it was a gift. And if I have if I have a religion, and I've said this before, actually, if I have a religion, it's the creative process, because it's an act of faith to sit down and expect something to happen, right?
It's incredible. I mean, also, okay, so I'm so down with that, because like, how do we know how to rewrite? Okay, rewriting, I mean, come on. Okay, that is like, that is the movement of the spirit. I'm sorry, but it just, how else do we know how to do it? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like.
And literally ideas and characterizations and through lines plop into your head. So there's something there where we are a vessel to the greater information up there.
Yeah.
And they say genius happens like in waves across the world. Like, you know, electricity was discovered in multiple places, but got first. And I think, so I think we're all privy to it. You just got to keep showing up to the space and something will be downloaded into what you're trying to do.
I really agree with that. I mean, my feeling is that, like, I don't know, this is going to sound maybe a little bit too metaphysical, but you know, you have these ideas. I mean, the thing is, it's hard to be a writer. It's not always that great. It's a struggle. It's, you know, in a lot of ways it's hard, but like you get these ideas and you have a strong sense that like, it's your job to work these ideas out, to get them down on paper, because you don't really know who's waiting for the message.
That's right. You don't know, you don't know who's waiting for the message.
Yeah.
You used to be the person that, or you
were the person waiting for the message.
Absolutely. I like before a couple months before the book came out, Benji Hart, who I interviewed, they sent him a galley copy, and he posted it on Instagram. And a student, a PhD student at Duke, got in touch with me. A trans man said, hey, this is the book that I always needed growing up. And I started crying on my phone, like just because really growing up. It's
totally well, you know, you write the books that you want to read and that you need probably spiritually. But also I think it's the important thing to remember is like, I mean, of course, you know, we all have different like levels of our career or whatnot, but you know, it could be that 500, you know, 100 or 500 people are waiting for the message. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't mean that it's less valuable. Like that message is still like really valuable, you know? I mean, it could be that 100,000 people are waiting for the message, you know what I mean? But like, I think that, I mean, it's one of the ways that community keeps itself knit together is that we've decided to keep faith, like in this really crazy thing, you know?
Yeah.
So
art's everything. It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it seems a little too cliche to just say art is my religion, but I mean, it is.
Yeah, well, I know. No, I don't think it's cliche. No. Okay, so we got to do the questions. Let's go. All right, so I'm just going to go with them from the top. Okay, this is from Nick. Is it Nick Ojo? Did you attend any ballroom events with your mom?
With my mom? No, I mean, my mom had a very charmed life growing up. She her mother was a singer, and at one point she was the resident singer at the Copacabana here in New York. And so so my mom, like, you know, one of the chapters, the church chapter, I go to the Studio 54 exhibit at Brooklyn Museum and sort of compare that to Paradise Garage, where ballroom folks were more sort of visible and allowed to come in. And my mom, I posted this on Instagram, showed some pictures. My mom's like, I went to Studio 54. I'm like, girl, I'm like, I know. So my mom's probably been to a ball, but because she lives in North Carolina now, I have not been to one with her.
Right. So I actually think what you're saying is like, she's been to many things that are mind blowing. Yeah, right.
She's there.
Okay, the next is from, I think it's from Corrine Warwell. I hope I'm saying that right. Where does ballroom and drag intersect and diverge? I'm interested in that question too.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's like a Venn diagram, but sometimes it's just a flat circle. I mean, my friend Channing just wrote a book about William Dorsey Swann, who was supposedly the first drag queen ever and a former slave, right? And so and he was holding drag balls for other enslaved people. So so it's on dovetailed there. And then cut to The Queen, the movie from 1968, Flawless Sabrina, who I was so lucky to meet before she passed away. Flawless Sabrina organized this pageant, and Crystal LaBeija, the founder of the house system and ballroom, was there. And so
Wow,
that was just that was
amazing.
a pageant level drag competition.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
So that's a literal point where they come together and then diverge because she didn't win. This wayfish little twiggy looking woman named Harlow with a bad wig did win. She Crystal felt like it was rigged, and so she was like, I'm taking my goods and my people and going up to Harlem, and we're going to do this ball thing.
Ah,
So
interesting.
so
Huh.
that's like a genesis point where they literally both come together and diverge. So it's like this all the time. It's just like this
Yeah.
all the time, but
That's
one is
great.
not exactly the other,
Yeah. I mean, it was helpful to me because I guess, I mean, maybe I know a little bit more about drag than I do about ballroom. So your book really helped me. Like it gave me, I feel like I want to know more now though. Like I want to like go deeper into it so I can understand it more. But your book is so amazing. And it's, as I said, like it's such an alive, like it's the way history should be told. It's like an alive, like full, fully enlivened idea of actually both like what went on and what like ballroom means now too. Okay, so the next question is, where do you see TV and streaming platforms? Let's see, where do you see intersecting with the ballroom like culture in the future?
I've the same way it has been. I mean, Pose is on Netflix and Legendary is
Huh?
on HBO Max, but
Mhm.
In Paris is Burning is on Criterion Channel.
Okay.
A lot of the folks that are in this book are worked on Pose. They were either consultants or choreographers or actors, etc. So Ballroom is being increasingly involved in these projects as opposed to just being backup dancers for Madonna.
Mhm.
I've asked the book questions to all of them about ownership, and they all have different nuanced answers to that. But I do know that they have some of my family members in Ballroom have started their own production companies. I mean,
Oh,
Gucci Pucci Gerson did the film, the documentary film Kiki, was a producer and co-directed it. But
uh-huh.
then they're also doing some other documentaries. I don't think I can mention specifically, but one of them is about one of the founding mothers from Paris is Burning.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
my agent, who's a wonderful agent and friend and colleague, she is trying to get this book turned into a docuseries because it just breaks
Oh,
up so well into categories.
oh, that would be amazing.
And then everybody who the production team would be my friends and family from
Yes. Oh, I love that. Okay, that would be, okay. I'm going to hope that happens. All right. Like, I think I'll do one more question. Okay, so what was the defining moment when you knew ballroom would be the subject that you would write about? That's a good question.
So like I said, I've known everybody, like my friends and family from Ballroom for about 10 years. And we were, some of us, Robert Simmer and Michael Roberson were working with me and some other colleagues on a project called 400 Years of Inequality.
Mhm.
And I was on the planning committee. I was at the New School Marketing. I was senior writer for marketing, and I ended up having to market that project, but then ended up just joining it because I love Robert and I love Mindy Full of Love, who created it, and the message is really good. It's like the 1619 project.
Mhm.
Michael didn't come to meetings very regularly, but he would be on emails and he was telling us about a ball one day, and I just replied all, and I was like, Michael, like, how are you? Miss you, love you. Where the heck are you?
Mhm.
Roisin Davis, who is the daughter of the academic Mike Davis,
Mhm.
is works in publishing, 7 Stories, and she is an agent, and she is
Mhm.
part of the 400 Years coalition. She saw the email between me and Michael, and she replied back to me privately, would you or Robert or somebody want to write a book about ballroom? Because
Mhm.
I would love to represent it. And I'm like, that it was literally just like, duh. Like I don't know what's wrong with me that I didn't like. I'm like, it's the subject that just keeps coming up. I've taught voguing workshops at AWP, like, like
Right.
but it just never occurred to me to sort of, I guess,
Ah,
bank off of it or
right.
anything. But
Right.
there's a void. There's a void there. A void needed to be
Yeah,
filled.
no,
And
totally, totally. I mean, people sort of think I mean, it's weird. When I was reading it, I'm just like, oh, I know this subject, but you don't really know it. Like you think you know it through just osmosis in the culture. But when I read your book, I'm like, no, I don't really know this. I mean, you actually laid out like, the actual, like, it's a cool book. It's kind of like I love like oral histories, right? Where like you're actually interviewing the people that were a part of the histories. That's like a beautiful it's like a beautiful way. Like I have a friend who is a historian. I mean, she always says like history is trauma, like trauma on the body. Like the body is the thing that actually carries history. So I thought your book was a great example of, you know, sort of trying to unpack some of that, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question, actually one more before we go. All right, so someone's asking what we're both reading. All right, so why don't you go first?
I'll grab it. Give me 1 second.
Okay,
So
sure.
I'm not trying to read it. I mean, I haven't started reading it yet. But
Yeah.
So a guy that I'm dating, we went to a bookstore.
Yeah, right.
Guy that I'm dating, we went to a bookstore to see my book on the shelf, Barnes and Noble. Yeah. So we got this book, which I haven't cracked open because it wasn't necessarily a vacation book to read, but
that book's amazing. I read it. No, actually, I listened to it. Actually, while I was doing my back exercises. Oh, good. Oh my God. It's amazing. Because it does like the actual histories of different people that weren't white. You know what I mean? Like and how they actually, oh, that book is amazing too. Wow.
Because I love Joy. My favorite piece is Flags on the Water. So, yeah.
Of course. Okay, so I'm reading because I'm writing a book about pain right now in the body and faith. Actually, so I'm reading Bob Flanagan's book called Pain Journal. And he was a performance artist, like from the 80s, and it's quite amazing. And then I also just finished a book by the Colombian writer Pilar Guitana called The Bitch, which is just a beautiful book it's kind of about motherhood, but also about pets like dogs, and it's about like the legacy of motherhood, and then also about how much care women are responsible for, and how maybe they should get out from under that a little, you know what I mean? So it's a really amazing book. So okay, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been really fun. I thought this would be fun, and it was, you know. Oh no, now I feel like you're like, Ricky, I can't hear you.
I'll repeat it. Yes, I muted because my bell was ringing. Yeah, I missed you. Let's hang out soon. This was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's go. Let's just go have a drink. Yeah. Too, we can all we can figure out our how I can be more involved in, I don't know, the things that I'm the most fascinated with. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I like about you. You stay fascinated. That's a fun characteristic.
I feel like my curiosity is the thing that that drives me forward. Yeah. Right. I mean, because what else do you have if you don't have that, you know?
A lot of nothing. Yeah. You got
yeah, exactly. Well, you're the same, right? Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, also intuition. I mean, I think your intuition, I actually think a writer needs intuition, imagination, and empathy.
Yes. Empathy.
I don't think you need that much. I don't think you need that much intelligence, actually.
No, you just need to practice. You don't need intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. Just work every day with those three things. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone who came.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Ricky, Darcy, thank you both so much for your time tonight and for this fantastic conversation. It really was wonderful. And thanks to all of you for joining us. One last time, don't forget, you can buy your copy of In the Category Is either in store or online. Thank you again to everyone here, and have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.